Episode 3 of Asia is called The Frozen North, and it's basically about the Arctic and the other kind of northern, colder regions of Asia, so Siberia, places like that. So we open up with Lake Baikal, which is a place I've always been interested to see. We saw a wee bit in Planet Earth, but this is a much more in-depth look, and we get some great shots of the ice. It just looks spectacular, and we spend quite a lot of time with the Baikal seal. So again, this is another animal I've always wanted to see a lot more of. It's always interested me. This is the only freshwater seal species in the world, so I think quite cool. We see this one pup under the ice, waiting for its mum. Nothing we haven't seen with other seals. However, when the ice starts to melt, the seal is trapped. This was just nerve-wracking. I was so hoping the seal would get out. I was on the edge of my seat throughout that whole sequence. And its mum comes along, and sure enough, the seal is trapped under the ice. So she has to lead it to a safer place where it can actually breathe. I can't think of another time where I've seen a seal pup swimming for a long period of time in these programs. And when they're travelling, the mother, she can hold her breath for up to half an hour. However, the pup, not so much. The pup's never used to that. So the mum actually breathes air bubbles, which sort of congeal to allow the pup to breathe through that. That was something I thought was really cool. It's never been seen before in any other seal species. It's really cool. Again, that was not something I expected to see. It was a really strong way of opening the episode. And yeah, again, as I said, that's an animal I've always wanted to see. So to actually just see them was cool enough. To get some really interesting behaviour as well was an added bonus. Then we go to Japan, where we see the red-crowned cranes. We see that there's this spring which remains open throughout the winter, which is vital for the cranes during their migration. And we see them dancing. That's quite cool. It's kind of a funny sequence. You see this younger crane, he's trying to learn to dance. And it's fun. Again, that's a fun sequence. I was expecting a bit more from it, maybe. I mean, it looks great. The shots are amazing. Then we go to the Tibetan plateau, which we saw in the last episode. That's a place I'm always fascinated by. And here we see a wolf. So this wolf is solitary, for one thing. That's not something that's very common in wolves. Wolves are traditionally very social animals. But we see it hunting chiru, which is a species of Tibetan antelope. It's them chasing the chiru down and managing to kill one. It's really cool. Again, seeing these antelope, which I've never seen before, it just further establishes how weird this place is. And seeing a solitary wolf as well was really cool. So that sequence was good. I did prefer the Tibetan foxes in the last episode, I think, but I still liked it here. So again, the Tibetan plateau, let's just keep visiting it, see what other weird stuff we find there. And then we go to the taiga, which is the big forest that circles the globe. Here we see a few different things. We see wild boar, which are the size of bears, apparently. We see amur tigers again, they're always cool to see. We spend quite a lot of time with Blakiston's fish owl, which are the largest owl species in the world. We see a pair, and the female looks after the chick while the male goes and fishes. That was cool seeing them fishing. We don't see owls fishing very often. And they say that obviously the female expects the male to pull his weight. But the whole time I was like, he's just eating all the fish, he's not like doing very much. But they do address that with the fact that the female comes over and just pushes him off, takes some fish and takes it back for the chick, puts him in his place. Again, it's quite funny. Then we see long-tailed tits. So we established that living in these cold forests isn't really ideal for small birds. A lot of them do die through the winter. But here we see deer strip bark of trees, which leads to sap being released. These actually form sap icicles, which are perfect food for the tits. So they come in and just feed off them. That was really interesting. And then we see brown bears. So we see brown bears in the winter trying to catch salmon. So there's this one mother and her two cubs going out catching fish. A male turns up, scares them off, and they have to go away. This is stuff I'd seen before. I was kind of like, okay, cool. Seen it before, not that impressive. However, as the sequence went on, I became very invested. There's two cubs. One of the cubs is doing all right. The other one's not doing too well. It's very likely that it'll die. And as we go on, we're like, this is quite, harsh. Again, I was like, okay, it's not very nice to watch, but we're seeing the harsh realities of nature, and I do appreciate that in these programs. And the mother, she's just like, nah, not happening. I'm going to try and save my cub. Goes out into the water, and just, you see the desperation. She's just frantically running around trying to catch salmon. She manages to catch one and bring one back, but even then it's like, he's not even strong enough to go and get the salmon. Eventually he is able to muster up the strength to move over and eat the salmon. Again, that was great. I actually think this is the best bear sequence I've seen in years. Brown bears are an animal I tend to take for granted in these series because generally it's the same thing. They're either eating salmon or it's a mother and her two cubs running away from a male. And this is both of those things. Again, I just didn't expect to be as invested in it as I was, but like the seal at the start of the episode, I was very much on the edge of my seat. I really wanted them to succeed. I didn't want that cub to die, so that was a really good sequence. Again, a surprise, for sure, but really cool. Then we see the Usurian cube-nosed bat, which is a species of bat that hibernates under the ice. It basically drops its heartbeat to 1 beat a minute, and then when the temperatures start to rise, not too much, but they start to rise, the bats emerge from the snow and just fly. This wasn't a sequence we spend a lot of time with, but we do get some really good shots of the bat. I mean, really in-depth looks. We see the bat's fur for one thing. I think that's as close a view as we've ever had of a bat. in any of these series. So that was really cool. Then we see a fox in Japan going off looking for fish. We see that some fishermen are able to keep these pockets in the ice, so they're able to catch fish throughout, which is perfect for the fox. However, it also attracts a lot of birds. We see black kites, we see white-tailed eagles, we see stellar seagulls, which I mentioned before in a previous review that we don't see very often. So it was really cool to see them here, and they do a really good job of talking about how big they are. They're really intimidating animals. I mean, I've seen white-tailed eagles here, and they're enormous. So stellar seagulls, which are even larger, and they're just bullying the white-tailed eagles. It just made them seem more impressive, I think. And the fox has to navigate through these to try and get the fish, and he relies on the eagles squabbling over the fish, and is able to catch one. I was really looking forward to this one. It was a sequence from the trailer. I thought, okay, that looks really good. And that did deliver. I think it was a really good sequence. And then we kind of end the episode with polar bears. Much like last week, I fully expected it to end with snow leopards. This one I was like, cool, we're going to end with polar bears. Not a surprise. We see that polar bears are struggling when the ice is melted. They're obviously swimming vast distances. And we see that they arrive on this island. So this island, I think, is... I couldn't tell if it's that one island that's really well known for having loads of polar bears on it. It might be, but it was really interesting. We see these polar bears just huddling around this little village, this Soviet weather station, and all these bears are there, and usually they wouldn't tolerate each other, but here they do. It was just quite surreal to see all these bears in this village. It was a really weird experience, and while I understand it's not a good thing that the bears are huddled there and they're having to deal with this because obviously the ice is melting, it was quite cool to see. And then when some of the ice does return, they kind of play in the ice. They make it out like there's this great triumph for the bears, but to be honest, I didn't see any food there, so I don't know how they're thriving, but it was cool to see, and it was a nice way of ending the episode. Then we get the diaries. So the diaries was the people filming the Churu and the wolf. I feel like with this episode, I'd have been happy to see any sequence being filmed, so this was interesting. It was really cool seeing how harsh this environment was. The guy really looked like he was struggling filming it, and also just in his hotel, like this, he wasn't sleeping. The food was just going everywhere because the bags were just exploding. All his crisps were everywhere. He's not really having any success filming the Chiru, but then he finds a wolf, and the wolf's kind of, it's not too frightened of them. It's kind of going off and letting them follow it, and it doesn't mind the drone. And then they just happen to stumble upon this wolf hunting Chiru, and they just film it. The battery's dying on the drone, and the battery dies when it catches the Chiru. So it basically seemed that they didn't even intend to film the wolf hunting the Chiru. It didn't look like they were intended to film the wolf at all. They were there just to film the Chiru. The fact that they got a wolf was cool. The fact that they got a wolf hunting was amazing. It was a rare case where the diaries was so much better than the actual footage. It was really cool that they just stumbled upon this. It does show you that this stuff happens. So that was really good. That was a really good diary sequence. So yeah, this episode is easily the best in the series so far. I really liked it. I mean, highlights were probably the Baikal seal, the bears, the wolves and the Chiru were good. I think there was everything in here was really good, to be honest with you. I liked everything in here. It was a really good episode. Again, this is easily the best episode so far. So yeah, what were your thoughts on the episode? Did you think it was the best so far as well? What were your highlights? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be doing the next episode next week, which is about forests, so that'll be cool. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe, or don't if you don't want to. It's perfectly fine. And yeah, I'll see you next week, and goodbye.